Hi, I'm Mike Pauly, the Managing Director for Mayflower Mortgage and Finance. We're a specialist self-build mortgage broker in the UK. We help hundreds of families a year build their own dream homes. The reason we're doing this presentation is the first question we get from most clients is, how do these products work? How can I get a mortgage on a piece of land without a house on it? I hope you find the information useful. Throughout the presentation today, we are going to touch on how to establish your budget and the 6 fundamental areas that each self-build lender will want to be comfortable with in order to fund your project. The first port of call as a self-builder should always be to establish your budget. Get the parameters that you know you have to work within, and that will be the liquid savings that you have available plus the borrowed funds that you'll be able to get from a lender equals that overall project cost that you know the plot purchase and your build cost will have to fit within. You'll notice on the slide, it says that assets, i.e. land already owned plus borrowed funds. If you already own the land, you don't necessarily need any liquid savings if the project financials are completable from the borrowed funds, i.e. 100% of your build costs covered by borrowed funds. You already own the land. You don't necessarily need to put any more liquid savings in at all if you own the land. The other aspect to assets would be if you already own your existing home, and a blue sky scenario we always see from clients is to stay in the existing house and then build the new property, move in once the build's completed. If the equity within the property that you live in currently is being used towards the project financials, the lender will want to see that liquid, not we'll sell this property once we're partway through the build. The lender will only release funds if they can see that equity is liquid. So in those scenarios, we'd have to capital raise on the existing dwelling, release some funds to put towards the budget for the project, or we could use some buy-to-lets, for example, if you have a couple of buy-to-lets or a buy-to-let property in the background with equity and they're being sold. The lender will take that into account, similar to if it was your main residence. However, if it's equity, it needs to be released on completion of the self-build mortgage. They want liquid funds, so those will either need to be sold on completion or we need to refinance and pull out through a mortgage product. Costings, super important when you're looking to build your own house. Anybody who's watched Grand Designs will know that the fag packet calculations don't tend to work. They're always 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, or even more over budget. In reality, if you need to take lending secured against the plots on a self-build mortgage, the lender will want to make sure they can see that build fully costed all the way throughout the build project and line by line itemized for materials and labour. There's some free templates on the Mayflower website, so you can pop on there and see what you need to include within the build project. And the important things to remember within costs will be those things that will pop up potentially before you even look to get a spade in the ground. So professional fees, and that could include quite a bit depending on the type of permission that's been agreed, or even if you have planning permission. If you don't, you could be paying a planning consultant, an architect, etc., etc. Even when the planning's agreed, depending on the local authority and the conditions in that planning, you'll have to get those conditions discharged before a lender will release funds. So the conditions may include, for example, a newt survey, a bat survey, an archaeological survey. We have had one client that I can remember that had an archaeological survey as part of a condition. So when he started the dig, he needed to have an archaeologist on site because of the area he was in. They found some remains and they had to be there for, I think it was another 60 days because they had to be there all the way throughout the excavation of the footings, and they found more and more remains. That can get quite expensive. I think that cost was, I think it was £1,000 a day for that particular client to have the archaeologist on site. A newt or a bat surveys, maybe £1,000. They may have to come back more than once before the pre-commencement conditions. So all these things are worth thinking about from a costing point of view when you see the permission and the conditions. Build that in towards your overall costs. The cash flow is the most important thing, I would say, when we're looking at financing a project. From reality and from experience, I can say you will want to make sure you've got enough money on site to keep it nice and stress free, that you can pay your subcontractors, your builders, your main contractor on time when you need it. And from the lender's point of view, they will want to make sure that how their product works will release funds to keep you in a green position throughout the build project. We'll dive into a little more detail about the costings and the cash flow as we work through the next few slides. In the next few slides, we're going to dive into the detail on how these products work and the 6 fundamental things the lenders will want to know or get comfortable with in order to fund your project. But before we do that, I just wanted to give an overview of where you can go and find these products. Now, they are limited in supply, so you're not going to be able to walk down your high street into one of the big national banks and get this type of mortgage funded. They just don't want to lend against land for someone to build their own house. The space you want to be looking at is the provincial building societies. Their ethos always has been to enable people to build their own houses. That's how building society started, and they're sticking to that ethos. So that's where you want to go. The way these products are regulated is the same as a traditional product if you're purchasing a property from a regulatory point of view. The underwriting is a lot more complex, and there's a lot more nuances that go within the underwriting and the criteria, and each lender will have varying criteria and sub-criteria under each heading in order them to get comfortable with a project. Different lenders will have different products, and those products will have different stage releases also. And as we mentioned earlier, the cash flow needs to work. The product needs to release funds in a way that will make you green all the way throughout your project. If you're going to work with a broker, all we say is just ask them how many self-build mortgage applications they've done in the last month or in the last year. If the answer is less than 100 in a year or 10 or 20 in the last month, we'd suggest just go and finding somebody else asking the same question. It is a real specialist area. It will potentially cause you more stress if you're not working with somebody who does it every single day. Right, okay, we're getting into the meat and bones of how these products work. The first 2 considerations that you and lenders will always want to have when they're looking to fund the project is the amount of deposit you'll need to put towards the project and how much that lender will lend to you based on your circumstances. They are mortgage products, so they're affordability backed, and all those affordabilities will vary depending on lender to lender. From the deposit point of view, the percentage of the deposit is based on the project costs, not the end value. So it'll be plot purchase plus the build costs, and the percentage will be based on that number. The minimum deposit you'll need is 15% of that project costs. Ideally, we always suggest to clients using 25% because it keeps most lenders available. But minimum deposit will be 15% liquid funds available based on your project costs. How much the lender will lend to you will depend massively on each customer's circumstances. So your income and how the lender treats that income. If you're employed, self-employed. If you're self-employed, how are you self-employed? Are you sole trader? Are you a limited company director? And what's your shareholding? How do you take that money out, etc.? And different lenders will treat that income differently, particularly if you're self-employed, and how they treat your outgoings. For example, the big one is existing mortgages and rent within the self-build space. Most people want to stay in their existing home or go into rented. We do have clients that live on site, but if you're in your existing property or you're renting, how does that lender treat that payment that's outgoing, and how does it affect the affordability for you? Now, each lender will have their own ways to assess income and outgoings, but what they'll also have is different stress tests. So there's 2 ways that lenders will do their affordability assessment. The old, what we call loan to income ratios. So you've probably seen this everywhere. It will be, 4.5 times joint income, depending on how the income's assessed. And then they will apply their affordability assessments in the background. Now, the affordability or stress tests that the lenders will apply are not based on the product that you're thinking to take in most cases. They will be based on a stressed rate. So your rate may be 5.5% interest, for example, on the self-build mortgage, but the lender may be stress testing that product at 9%. So when they run through the numbers, the affordability will drop. Another lender may apply a stress test of a lot lower at 6.5. So it's about marrying that to meet the requirements you need for your project or your budget for your project. After you've got those 2 areas established, there's 4 main areas that lenders will want to get comfortable with in order to fund your self-build project. And the first one of those is the construction type or the superstructure that you're looking to use. The reason it's important is certain lenders will fund certain types of superstructure and they may not fund other types of superstructure. And further to that, they may fund a superstructure with one type of outer skin, but they may not be comfortable to fund the superstructure with a different type of outer skin. If we use the example of a SIP structure, the lender may fund that SIP structure with a certain type of cladding, but if that's changed, they may not want to fund that type of superstructure. All of the self-build lenders will want to know how your build is being managed, or the level of involvement that you have with your project, and potentially the level of experience that you've got in construction or doing similar types of projects. Now, the lenders know that this is self-build and you're doing this for your own property to live in, and you're going to want to get involved. We do have clients that will do everything themselves, literally all the way through the spectrum to the other end, where clients will work on what's called a turnkey basis and everything's done for them and they move into the property. Lenders will fund either scenario and anywhere in between, but it's about aligning the lender's appetite to risk based on your potential involvement, or how involved you want to get with your project, and making sure they're happy with that. We mentioned earlier that build costs are really important to the self-build lenders, and they want your project costed from start to finish, and they want that itemised. The important thing to take away from this section is how comfortable the lenders are with your build costs. There are lenders in the self-build space at the minute that have a minimum price per square metre as their threshold. If your build costs are less than that, they won't fund, or what they'll say is, we need more cash in from you, or we need more of a loan to build in to meet our minimum price, our threshold to risk on your build costs. There are other lenders that are more flexible and will take a more case-by-case approach based on your involvement. So this point really ties into section 2, or point 2 on this slide, of how the build's being managed. What we'll find is where people are more involved, costs can be a lot less because there's less labour being paid out for, and you're doing a lot of the work yourselves, for example. But it is about aligning that build cost towards the lender's risk. What you don't want to happen is your application goes in 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks down the line, however long it is, the surveyor gets those plans and the build costs that you've given to the lender, and they say this isn't feasible, we recommend not to fund. So it's really important to make sure that your build costs are feasible and that they tie in with the lender's appetite to risk. 3 points we've mentioned above all tie in nicely to point 4, the cash flow requirement, and this is the key to make sure you've got money on site when you need it, keeps everyone de-stressed, and the lender will want to make sure, at least as a paper-based exercise, that you're in a green position based on how the product works. If we look at point 1, the reason why the superstructure is important, or will largely dictate how the cash flow needs to look, is if we use the worked example of a traditional construction being more steady, i.e. the bricklayer will be laying brick by brick. If we look at an off-site system, such as a timber frame system, that's how most of our customers tend to build. Most frame manufacturers, if you're just buying that frame from them, will need that bought and paid for before delivery. Not added any value to site, so you've got a real big peak on day 1 or week 1 or month 1 of your cash flow. Hence why that has that impact on how the cash flow is likely to look throughout your whole project. We look at point 2, how the build's being managed. That potentially is going to have an impact on your cash flow. And let me give a worked example to explain why. You could, for example, have a main contractor that's doing all the work for you throughout your project. Now, that main contractor will have terms, and you could be using a timber frame system, and that builder may use that timber frame manufacturer a lot of the time because they have a relationship, and they may have 90-day terms or even longer potentially on the payment terms with that provider. Now, what that main contractor may do, because he knows you have the finance agreed, and he may want that payment made spread throughout the build project. So just because you have that off-site cost, if you have the main contractor, they may absorb that cash flow for you. The alternative to that is if you don't have a main contractor and you're managing the build yourselves, you have to pay 100% of that kit system on day 1. And it's how that product's set up to make sure you have that money available, which we'll move on to in the next few slides. It's the arrears and the advance-based product. When your funding's agreed from your lender, the funds will be released in phases on a self-build mortgage. So they will agree the full facility for you at the outset, and then they'll phase that payment throughout the whole build. They will release money for you to purchase the land, And then most lenders will release up to another 4 or 5 stages. There are some lenders in the self-build space that don't have any maximum amount of stage drawdowns, and you can request a stage drawdown whenever you want to. Most of the lenders, or a good majority of the lenders in the self-build space nowadays, are flexible on drawdowns. So they don't want you, or don't insist on you getting to a set milestone stage like they used to, and then you having funds released. If you've done works and you need money released, you can instruct the valuer to come out to site. If the works have been done, value's been added, the lender will release further funds for you to move the build forward. When you're submitting your application for your self-build mortgage, all of the lenders will want to see a proposed schedule of drawdowns. So they get an idea of how much you want and when you want it throughout the build project. But like I've just said, most of them are fairly flexible. So if those stages come slightly earlier, or you need money slightly earlier, but there's value been added and works have been done, you can request that earlier than you thought you'd need it from the lender. And if you need slightly more money, you might be able to draw that down depending on the value. Or you may want slightly less money in some examples and then pull that money later in the build. There is flexibility there with most of the lenders, but just be aware they'll want an idea of what your stage drawdown is likely to look like on application. Depending on your circumstances and your project, you will either need an advance-based mortgage or an arrears-based mortgage. An advance-based mortgage is what it says on the tin. The money is given to you up front. Let's use the example of purchasing a plot. The lender will release money for you to buy the plot on day one, up to their maximum loan to value limits, and you have to put some cash in. But they will also give you part of the money to start the first phase of your works, again, subject to their maximum loan to value or loan to cost limits. The arrears-based products will release money in arrears after work's completed. Let's use the same example. If you're looking to purchase the plot, the lender on an arrears-based product will also give you the money. So they'll give you the money on day one to purchase the plot, but then what you'll need to do is use some of your own money to start the build and move it forward. In the traditional sense, really up to damp course level, what we call DPC, and then lender will come out, revalue, release further funds. The caveat to that with an arrears is if you already own the plot, we can use an arrears-based mortgage. The lender will technically do a remortgage on the land on day one, and we can pull out that value and it gives you cash day one to get started. So you're on an arrears-based product in that scenario, but you'll see the money in advance on day one. Whether you need an advance-based product or an arrears-based product will be dictated by your project and the cash flow requirements of that project. The positives and the negatives of each, if you like, there are less lenders that will do advance-based lending, and the setup fees generally, and there can be exceptions, but generally can be more expensive because the lender's taking more risks. There's more fees associated with that because money being paid up front before there's any real security. On the flip side, the arrears-based lenders, there will be more lenders available. The setup fees tend to be slightly lower. Again, there's exceptions, but tend to be slightly lower in the main because the lender is taking less risk on the project because work's being done before they're releasing further funds for the build to move forward. Thanks for listening. Hope you found the information useful. This wasn't meant to be any type of advice. It really was just a whistle-stop tour of how these types of products work. Put the knowledge out there to help you start on your self-build journey. So just to summarize, first two key elements will be you need to know how much deposit you need, and you need to know how much the lender will lend to you for your project. And then those four key areas every lender wants to get comfortable with initially to make sure they can even look at considering a project: construction type, how the project's being managed, the cash flow of the project, and the costings. If you need any other help, there's free resources on the Mayflower website. There's loads on there. Pop over. Hopefully you find that useful. If there's anything you want us to go into more detail on that's in this specific presentation, or if there's anything else in the self-build space that you want us to dive into, like an explainer video, pop some comments below. We're happy to do that for you. Send us an email. We'll get that done.